Okay, what's going on, guys? It's Caleb here, and I'm back with the one and only Michael Oliver. I decided after the last video that we made that was pretty successful, and you guys had a lot of questions, so I got ahead and I brought him back with us today. Michael, how are you doing?
Doing great. Thank you for the invitation, Caleb. Always a pleasure to talk with you and help out you and anybody else.
Yeah, of course. And I think the most, well, it's, wisdom is always welcome as well, especially across, the world of sales professionals. But yeah, with that, so as you guys, for those of you who are in my community, if you're not already, once again, that's something free for you to join. I put in a post a couple of weeks back, pretty much just asking if you guys had questions for Michael Oliver, because if you go back on our last video that we did, there's a lot of questions about sales. So I opened it up, and today we're just going to go through some of the questions that you guys asked and maybe go down the rabbit hole and have some dialogues on some of the topics. And yeah, just explore more of the world of natural selling and how it is we can be more effective as sales professionals. But sweet, with that, rolling into the first question that we have here, the first one someone asked is, what are the top 5 habits that have attributed to your success as a salesperson, and how much were you making as a salesperson? And the why they asked this was because habits are what you repeatedly do, and that's something that I would like to replicate. Since I know, Mr. Miner, other infamous name in the space, made 2.4 million as a sales rep, which gives him an authority, and I kind of want to see how much he was making per year to make a comparison. So there's sort of 2 parts there. One is sort of the habits that you had to be successful, and then also what that correlated to income wise. And I think we can sort of, we take that for what it was. But yeah.
Which one should we go with? Let's talk about the income wise. I think the income wise is irrelevant. Success is whatever you determine your successes want to be. And if making a couple of $100,000 a year, as opposed to $2 million a year is satisfactory for you, then that's what you want to do. So facing the whole thing on money, for example, I think is one of the key components, or one of the components in what is driving success. And for a lot of people, money is not success. Other things are success. So it's an impossible question to answer. But if you want to extrapolate my first year when I was selling solar energy systems in Southern California in 1980, on today's dollars, it was around about $1.3, $1.4 million. Did I do that every year? No. There are years where I didn't do that. There are years where it wasn't as much, especially those years when I was working out how to pull together the whole natural selling process, which I launched in 1997. So that question isn't for me a relevant question, because it doesn't matter. Okay, that's the thing. And I think getting hung up on that kind of stuff can be detrimental for you to do that, unless you're a driven type of personality who has to do that. I'm not driven. I'm driven in my own way, but I'm not a driven type of personality, though I do have elements of that. So that's the answer to that question. So answer to the second question was the 5 elements.
Five habits.
5 habits. Well, if you want habits, then read about that in Stephen Covey's book, seven Habits. I mean, that's an excellent book, and to which I've referred to, and in fact, in my updated online course, I refer to it, and also acknowledge him as well. But my own personal habits are really discipline, being disciplined in doing the stuff that you need to do. In fact, let me just, I've got a little thing overside here. Where is it? Something that I've written over here. Okay, here it is. Yeah. Focus on what I want. Everything else is a distraction. So I mean,
I love that.
That's pretty much it, And if I'm not focusing on what I want, and if I'm focusing on all the distractive stuff, if you like, then I find my tension goes up. If I'm not doing the stuff that I need to do in order to move forward, and I mess around with the administration stuff as opposed to doing it later, for example, that's not good. I feel that tension, so I immediately switch it back. So it's really about discipline and perseverance.
Yeah, and I think you raise a really good point with the first part about money being irrelevant, where I've even seen in my own sales development where if money's your motivator, once you kind of hit that target that you had set for yourself, you kind of ease off because you spend so much time sitting around that too. But also, when you think about sales calls with people, it's like assuming everybody's going to show up to the call and they're going to buy that solution just because it's going to make them more money. right? And that's something where, I mean, wouldn't that be part of the essence or part of natural selling, right? Is not assuming that everybody's going to be motivated for the same reasons.
Well, yeah, it's kind of a balance. I mean, especially if you're starting out, you don't have money, then obviously your focus is on making money, which is fine. But it depends on whether that focus is actually, how can I put it, preventing you from making money because you are focused on it. People pick up on that energy and they tend to be resistant.
Yeah.
So basically, if you're using standard sales training techniques, but more importantly, if you're thinking in a standard way that is about getting the sale, that energy comes across, and it will cause people to push back on you. And that's the whole essence of natural selling is to rethink that, stop doing that. The moment you let go, I started teaching that like I said, in 1997. And people immediately picked up on that. They picked up not on the aspect of wanting to enroll more people or sell more. They picked up on the energy of being able to somehow let go of that and focus on the other person, and to ask questions, but not the type of questions that they were being taught to ask. So that was very important. But money is important, but it's a balance. It's kind of a yin yang thing here, and it depends on sort of your mental attitude as to how you start.
Yeah. No, beautifully put. Another question that we have is, so this one's a bit more technical, but the question is, I still have issues with the I need to think about it. And when I respond with questions like the ones that you share in the book and the course, I only get answers like, I'm fully convinced that this is right for me and is worth the money. I just don't make these kinds of decisions for this amount of money without sleeping on it for a night. It's either exactly this or a variation of it. And the reason why they're asking the question is, the main reason I'm asking is because I feel it's wrong to keep looping around and not respecting their wish for thinking about it. And all the typical follow-up questions don't seem very natural, and people start reacting in a defensive way. It's almost like some people were raised with, raised being told, like, you just don't buy an expensive thing without not thinking about it. Bear in mind, my product is a coaching program for music producers. It's not a spend money to make money type of thing.
That's a long question.
A very long question.
There's lots to absorb there. Well, I want to think about it, or I want to wait or not rush into it, is an interesting one. And again, we kind of have to step back into, in essence, the mindset, first of all, the intention of the salesperson, as well as the structure of the discovering stage. Because the discovering stage is basically where it's bought, where it's sold, however you want to look at it. It's not in the presenting stage, which is most traditional sales, where you're presenting and trying to guess at, what features are going to be relevant to the person. Because
like
you're guessing
buckshot, you say a lot of things hoping it, it hits the target.
Just throwing spaghetti at the wall. Or ceiling, you don't know what's going to stick. Something might stick, but you don't know if it's going to be relevant or not. And a lot of times you don't even know what's stuck, right? So it's the mindset of coming from that intention of wanting to help, first of all. So let's assume that's in place. The second aspect is, what did you do in the discovering stage? How did you help that person or these people? So let's put it out there generally. Help themselves to influence themselves that this is exactly what they want and you're the right person to do it with, or not. I mean, the discovering stage is that's what you're doing. You're looking for that link so that you can create that commitment within the discovering stage. It's not done in the presenting and committing stage. It's done in the discovering stage, where the person has committed themselves to moving forward and committed themselves to you. So that's a real key element there, which is what a lot of people miss. Okay, so there's that aspect there. So, and there are 7 different types of questions that you can ask. You don't have to ask them all, but there's seven different types. So, so when you transition into the presenting stage is just packaging everything together, reminding and putting everything into one box, as opposed to having bits and pieces out there. Putting the lid on the box, putting a bow around it, and so doing a nice bow and saying, there we go, and the committing stage is just a natural extension. However, there are times when you will get a resistance to moving forward. And the question you have to ask is that if you've done all what I've said before, all right, here's the
Mhm.
key, is that you can now go deeper with that person. So if you
How
try to
so?
use, okay, if you try to use standard sales techniques, in other words, if you're coming from a place of wanting to sell, that energy is already picked up. That person
Mhm.
knows that. So if you try and push back on the one, I want to think about it, they'll push back on you, and you'll start losing ground very, very
Mhm.
rapidly
Mhm.
because they know that you're pressuring them to sell. If you're coming from a place of wanting to help, you can now help them potentially overcome what might be an internal resistant barrier, which is preventing them from moving forward.
Mm.
And it
Mhm.
allows you to talk about it.
That's got to be one of the, you bring up something really interesting there, which is the internal resistance barrier. Because how would you, for someone who doesn't know, how do you segue a conversation to being able to overcome an internal barrier as opposed to maybe something external? Or how do you know when you're dealing with one or the other? Well, it's two questions, but.
Yeah. Um, well, this is where you sort of step, it takes a bit of experience to do this, but this is where you step into the role of extending, if you like, um, beyond the so-called salesperson's role into
Mhm.
helping them break through. And it's not so much overcoming, it's actually sort of breaking through
Yeah.
a potential barrier they can keep themselves. And the way you do that, you say, you say something like, you acknowledge what they say. You say, I see. So perhaps you can help me. When you say you want to think about it, is there something we missed that we need to talk about to help you get what you want and need right now, move you forward? Okay, so you can ask that question. Now, it's a pretty standard question to ask.
Mhm.
You ask that question coming from a place of trying to sell, and you're not going to get very far with it. But if you come from a place of already establishing that rapport, that trust, the fact that you're the knowledgeable, credible person who knows what you're talking about, you can
Mhm.
ask that question. You can ask it comfortably as well. So it's not something you have to stutter over or wondering how to get around. It's a very comfortable question to ask. You have to come from that mindset, what I call the natural selling mindset place, which is pretty unique in the whole sales industry. I don't know of any other sales company, including some of them we're familiar with, that actually knows the fundamental aspects of this or even teaches it.
Yeah, and actually there's another piece of content we made that's it will probably be coming up shortly after this one, but it's about the mindset and not the tactics. And so if you guys are curious about learning more about what Michael just said there about, understanding how you get the energy and the mindset right as opposed to the tactics, we have our own actual segment on that. So that might be coming out shortly. Um,
So,
mhm.
I'm going to share some more with you. So, what you can actually do then is you can extend that, either waiting for an answer or not waiting for an answer, and you can basically say something like, we've agreed this is exactly what you want to need, and it's important to do it now. Is that right? And you confirm that. Why? Because you've confirmed it earlier. You've confirmed it in the qualifying type of question that you've asked. There are different types of qualifying questions, and you can follow and you've expressed a strong need for whatever the solution is. Correct? You asked that, okay? And you always
Mhm.
tag a question on the end, and you've expressed a strong need for the solution. Correct? They say yes. So I'm curious then as to why you want to wait.
Mhm.
Okay, or you can then say, so apart from wanting to wait because this is what you do overnight, is it possible that there's something else that is coming up for you that's making you internally resistant to making a change right now? For example, are you preventing yourself from moving forward based on some past experience, perhaps?
Mm.
Ask questions like, so are you aware what drives your response and holds you back from moving forward? Is this something that you do a lot of? Another question,
Wow.
you can ask is, and so when you sleep on this, what is usually your answer in the morning?
Mhm.
And you might find as well, we decide that we perhaps wait, perhaps whatever it was. So that gives you a clue that in fact it's a behavior that they have, which is actually preventing them, from getting or doing this stuff. So you can talk about that. So it's a bit like therapy in a sense, I guess.
Yeah. You
Ask,
raise
not
a
ask, but
mhm.
the whole thing though is about natural selling. It's not just a sales training program. Natural selling is a personal growth program. You do this stuff and you will personally grow.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're a natural seller. It's not a thing. It's a way of being.
Well, I mean, fundamentally, and I brought this up with one of my students recently, is that you're a change agent. And if you that's what you're doing, you're helping people change from where they are here to get them to where they want to go, which is over here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to be a change agent, then who's got to understand about change first? We do.
The agent.
We have to understand. The agent has to understand. The salesperson has to understand. This is in my world. This is the natural selling world, as it were. And this isn't an intellectual type of thing. This is about understanding it and studying it, so you can help that person go through the process of growing themselves to make them move forward. Because whatever it is they're looking for is a growth pattern. When you're buying a car, it's still a bit of your growth pattern going through a process of buying a car, for example.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I think about the last, I'd almost bought a car a while back, and it's interesting, right? Because you don't realize that even we sometimes as change agents, we're a victim of some of the own patterns as well. But I think also seeing them and being aware of them and overcoming them and knowing how we navigate and understand ourselves, do you feel like that helps make it easier for us to be able to help others with that? I guess you have to be someone who's comfortable with change and doing all these things to be able to help other people through change.
Yeah. In fact, I go quite a lot of detail on this in phase 3 of my, and now I'm talking about my online course, of the updated online course. Phase 3 is dedicated completely to, I think there are 26 ways to respond to what we call resistance. I don't call them objections. There's different ways that people can express it, and it also depends on when they express it. Whether they're expressing some concern. I call them concerns. Concern at the beginning of the conversation, middle of the conversation, or at the end of the conversation. And part of this is to learn, what these concerns are. Most salespeople know what they are. They're just lazy about trying to understand them. They think a concern comes up, and they treat it as an objection to be overcome, and all that does is they
hop straight into tactic mode, and they pull out the thing that they studied from hours ago, and it's like, oh, this is the time to use this one analogy that I heard about. But it's not. I mean, it's not natural. And it's interesting you say that, because even in my own sales career, and with all the professionals I've met as well, almost always, even in the community, I get asked on these calls, well, what analogy would you use to overcome this, or what thing would you say to help them overcome that? And the thing that it's like, I've never been great at using specific analogies. But it's never felt like, being a magician with a bunch of tricks that I can do. Whenever I was in that mindset, it never worked, because I mean, you can only go so far as the trick, and if the trick doesn't land, then you don't have any principles or any foundation to walk on, right? If you pull the one thing you know how to do out and it doesn't work, then you're like, and then the call kind of gets weird, because you're needy.
You use the word that trick. You're trying to trick someone into something, and the whole thing is anathema, because we talk about finding needs, creating relationship. Well, you don't trick people. If you want to create a relationship, you don't try and trick them. You don't, and you definitely don't treat whatever they say as something to be overcome, because most times you don't even know what they're saying, and you're assuming that you know what they're saying. And so all that stuff is just, let's put it this way: the salespeople create the resistance. The resistance doesn't come from a person just because they're being, be-minded or anything else like this. We create that resistance. So the question comes: if we are the creators of our universe, then do you think we can create something different? The answer is yes. And that was my mission when I set out. And I used to do all those sort of overcoming things. Hated every single minute of it. But that was what I was told you had to do. I mean, I'll share with you. I would sit in front of a client, and when it came to do my presentation, and there'd be the resistance, and I'd be getting to the stage where I was trying to overcome the resistance, and I'd be relaxed and calm and what have you. But if you ever observed my right hand, it was usually down behind me, gripping the leg of the chair as tight as I could, because I had to let the tension out. The tension was so severe. So here you were looking at calmness, but the tension was really down here because I had to let it out. And it was in the stages, there's got to be another way. There has to be another way. We talk about relationships. We talk about about dealing with people as not as human beings, use those words in those days, but let's talk about relationships. But the reality was, it wasn't about helping them. Oh, that's right. Talk about sort of helping them achieve what they want and what they need. It was never about that. It was all about getting the sale,
Yeah.
and somehow trying to work out what it was they did need. And those clever people knew that. And
Yeah.
I used to speak with them. I knew a couple, but they could never explain to me what they were doing, and I didn't have enough, if you like, pegs or little compartmentalization things that I could understand that. And they'd always talk about relationships. And I go, yeah, I understand that, but tell me what it is you're actually doing. Why are you doing it? They could never
Yes.
explain. In other words, they had unconscious competence. They were
Mm.
they were good, but they didn't know why they were good. And I thought, I'm going to understand this, and I'm going to get good. I'm going to know why I'm good.
Yes. You raised something really interesting there, which is running into people who are good, but they have the unconscious competence. I've seen that in my sales career, where there's people that I've met in different orgs that I've worked for, where there's someone who's really, really good sometimes in some environments. And I mean, you can see it in practice, right? Maybe you watch a call and you understand it, but you ask them to try to explain it to you and they can't. They're just like, I don't know, you just do it. Like, that's about as far as an explanation as you get. And yeah, yeah. Well,
Well,
and I'd say,
I
mhm,
have some clients actually who slipped back into that. I was talking one what's the day? Saturday. Yeah. It was somewhere time earlier this week. And we
mhm,
were talking about that, whereby uh, he he very quickly picked up the whole program and came very consciously competent. And then he was talking about that he doesn't even think about it anymore. He used to have sort of a guideline scripting, some questions that he knew he had to ask, and something he just sort of refer to, glance at the side, right? But he went into unconscious competence, which is a great place to be,
mhm.
because now you're in the flow. You're in the
Right.
flow. You can move around the discovering stage.
Yeah.
It's not a linear ABC 1, 2, 3 questioning process. It's understanding how to move around, and that's where he was, and it was a very joyful experience for him.
Well, I find that that's sort of the nirvana you want to get to as a sales professional. And I've told with anybody that I've ever developed, and I don't know if it's sort of a milestone you have for them, but I know when I look at sales, at least beginners or people who are new, one of the quickest places I want to try to get them to is just that fluidity, to be comfortable on the call, to be their authentic self. Because once they're there, they have quite a bit of fun with it. And they typically have a lot of pain and grief and strife prior, and they don't know why things are working. But it's interesting because it almost seems like you almost have to forget everything you've learned really to be able to go back to that. Because I think we as humans, right, are very naturally persuasive. Like, you look at like a kid who's good at talking their mom or their dad into things. It's like they're good. Are they needy sometimes? Yeah, maybe, but sometimes they're good at cycling just between, if you think another exercise, well, just a tactic, right? I feel like the viewers might get a kick out of is just try selling something that's not your product for a minute. Like, try just selling something general, or not even selling, maybe just have like a general conversation that's structured in whatever sales format you're using, and see if you can bring it to a conclusion or a consensus. Just get comfortable flowing through.
Right. Try selling that. There are 25 different features on that pencil. There are 25 different features. Try selling that. You
Yeah.
talk about sort of, you didn't use the word, but I use the word unlearning. For many sales people, it's a matter of unlearning stuff. And it's not about just unlearning their tactics or their strategies. It's actually about unlearning what they're thinking about selling, and to make it a joyful experience as opposed to a fearful experience of trying to pick up the phone and thinking it's about persuading someone to do something. It's not. It's allowing the other person to influence themselves. And the way you look at it is that your attitude is, especially if you're calling a lead, and it comes like this. It appears that you have a problem. I might have a solution. Well, let's talk about it and see if we can get together. That's all it is. And we're looking for a yes or no answer to it. So the questions, people talk about asking questions and wanting to, ask questions that sort of get the right answers. There's no such thing as a right answer from the salesperson's point of view, except as a right answer from the potential buyer's point of view. And I don't care whether I get a yes or no answer, because I know how to develop either one of those. Unless
Yeah.
it's a resounding no, this is not for me. Here are the reasons, etc. And it's like, that's fine. You accept that. But the whole aspect of asking questions is you go in there with a blank slate, you ask your questions, and you have to let go of hoping that they're going to answer in the way that you want them to answer. Because
So,
that's, go ahead.
well, so I was going to say, building on this thread that we're on right here, one of the next questions that was asked was, getting comfortable with people who might not answer the way you'd like them to answer. Question 4 was for super close prospects who don't open up, do you have any strategies for connecting and finding out their pains and needs? Why they're asking is they get caught up with this, especially with stoic older men.
Okay, let me just start down something there. First of all, don't call them prospects. If I called you a prospect, how would you feel?
I winced at saying that because I remember our first interview. That was the one thing I got caught on live. And so ever since then, it's always potential customers.
Yeah, or potential buyers or prospective customers or people, whatever you want to call them. People, it's like we're consumers. You see it so much on advertising and the news, about consumers. I'm not a consumer. I'm a person, and my needs are different than most people. My fundamental needs are different than most people. I buy a loaf of bread because of my needs. How many loaves of breads are there? For about 200, 300, 400 different types of breads that you can get. I'll buy specific. I buy specific bread. Well, it depends on what country you go to, how it's baked, and so on and so forth, right? I mean, pretzels, that's a type of bread. Right?
Yeah, so, no, I just joke. American supermarkets,
but
so,
I mean,
I digress.
But we all buy different breads for our own needs, But what is it fundamentally? It's bread. It's like buying a car. We buy a car specifically, fundamentally, emotionally, subjectively to satisfy something, as well as to satisfy the logical side, which is buying a car. At the end of the day, what is it? It's a car, right? We buy for our own reasons and not theirs. So from the point of view, let's go back to that word prospects. I kind of wandered off a little bit there. Is that don't call people prospects. I mean, what value is in that? No, sometimes I'll say that to salespeople, and they say, yeah, but I never use it in front of them, or I only use it when I'm talking with my colleagues. And I say, yeah, but how do you know? Because you're using that word, that in fact the way you talk with your potential buyers is that somehow or other that energy is coming out. That how do you know that's not happening? And you don't know, because in most times it does. It comes out. If I think of you as a certain person, the way I talk with you or at you or to you, okay, is going to reflect the way I think about you. Unless I detach from that and don't think about you anything other than as a human being.
I look at that and it's like, it's the same thing you might see with like friends and gossip circles, right? Where it's like, if you talk a bunch of trash about, it doesn't matter if you don't say it to their face. If you still carry the judgment in private, you carry the judgment, and whether or not you really consciously believe it a lot, you kind of imprint it into yourself. If it's part of your standard to see someone in that light, it will come out consciously or unconsciously in the things you do, and so you have to adjust your standard away from that. So no, I totally resonate with you on that.
Yeah, Deepak Chopra talks about that. He says, when you judge someone, does it change them? And the answer is no. It doesn't change them, right? It doesn't change them. When you judge someone, it doesn't change them. But what it does do, it shows that your need to judge, and your need can get in your way, as there are so many needs. There are dozens of needs. I talk about a lot of them in my course, and in fact talk about them in the book. Your need to present, your need to tell, your need to educate, your need to persuade, your need to overcome objections, your need to close. All these needs get in your way. Get rid of your needs and focus on their needs. And all of a sudden you'll find that your needs will be met.
Stay detached.
It's the first principle of natural selling is detachment, is letting go of your needs so you can focus on theirs. And while a lot of sales trainers will talk about that, they don't actually, how can I walk the talk? I'm being really blunt. They're being really blunt here. And if you want proof of that, listen to their words. Listen to their words when they use the words prospects, closing, objection handling, overcoming objections. Listen to the words on videos where it's all about, not about helping out the person. There's an illusion there. It's about trying to get the sale. It's all geared towards that. A lot of it's trickery. And I'm being really blunt because why? Because it's upsetting. It's upsetting that this amazing profession of ours, this sales profession, is looked upon with askance by the population, and quite rightly so, because the the profession is, how can the salespeople are doing it are being taught and think that they have to take tactics and strategies which are not, is nothing to do with human behavior. Is nothing to do with about people coming together. It's about trying to get something. And it's not about that. You can get anything you want if you just let it go and let people tell you what it is they want and listen to what they're saying.
Well, so I think bringing this back around, so if you ran into somebody who was really closed off or wasn't really opening up, or at least, I mean, you say that, and now I can hear sort of my own dialogue filtering stuff. Or maybe I'm the one needing them to be open. Maybe I don't need that in the call. But I guess, what advice would you give for someone who's struggling or feels like they're having conversations with people who don't open up as much as they'd like to, or share as much as they'd like to?
Then declare it. Then, you call it as is it. It is what it is. Therefore, declare it. If you're not getting enough information, then let them know. No, I bring this analogy up quite a bit, is that, you can sit in front of a driver personality, a buyer, for example, and they say, okay, what's the bottom line? And if you're a person who can be intimidated, and you're not a driver personality, and understand that, this is not this person being rude. This is a person who is just reflecting their personality and style. So if you're one of the other three styles and you get intimidated by that, and you start stuttering and coming back with a reply or something like that, you're doomed. So and the way you change it is that you say, so when you say, what's the bottom line, may I ask you what you mean by bottom line? And the reason you ask that question, because no one knows what they mean except him or her. No one knows. And if you reply to the question without knowing, you're guessing. And it's not, this selling is not a guessing game. Communication should not be a guessing game. Communication should be one, especially as a salesperson, going in with a blank slate. And you might get pushback on that, saying, well, bottom line. So you stay calm, you say, I understand that. But what I don't understand is what you mean by bottom line. Can you help me out here? And immediately you do that, that person will understand themselves, and they'll start explaining what bottom line means. Now you've got something to work with. So that's an idea of it. If a person is being closed, let them know that. Just say, how the context is. It has to be in context. But say, let me ask you a question. I'm struggling here because I'm not feeling that I'm getting sort of, what it is they exactly need. Or someone will come up with an answer and then later on contradict themselves. It's a thing I called, two truths. Is that we carry two truths within us. One is a mask, all right, which is what we basically show the public, and the other one is ourselves. And it's a kind of a Japanese sort of analogy. There's some Japanese shows, public shows and so on, which show the mask, the social mask that we want people to see. But if you connect with a person, they will part that mask and they'll let you see where they are. Now, some people, even if you go through the natural selling process, start off, still remain quite close. So you talk with them about it so you can start opening the mask, get a glimpse through it, see who they are, allow them to talk with you, to who they are, and that's how you help people to open up. So rather esoteric way of answering that question. So
I think one thing I want to just expand on before going to the next question is, one thing, when you really own that first principle of staying detached and removing your needs, it's like one place I find reps, and I've even been there, right, where you get stuck, where you say, look, I'm not getting enough information to know what you need. But you had such an interesting way of saying is like, it's like not, I forgot exactly how you said it, but it was worded in a way that the me, my, and myself was completely eliminated from the statements and the questions. That's one thing I've said as a tactic before to people, is like, you should try to delete the words I, me, and my from your vocabulary, and you'll see some more success with that sometimes, if you can remove more of yourself from the conversation and focus just keeping, or only using language that keeps your focus on, the prospective customer, because they feel more heard and the conversation seems like it's more focused on them. So the next question we've got here, which is, it's not, well, let's go. I want to go to one above it, because the other one, it seems like it's something that question 3. what are some follow-up strategies with prospective customers, but they wrote prospects? What are some follow-up strategies with prospects who've booked on your calendar? How do you isolate fear, logistics, and what are some ways to open up a gap on short 10 to 20 minutes calls or in a 3-call structure? So some context on this offer that these people are talking about. I've seen some people in my community with it. They've got a
Okay.
3-call process where people opt in for a challenge. It's like a 7-day challenge. On like day 3 is the first time they meet the sales professional. They book on the calendar. They're asked to like meet with one of our coaches. And so they'd book a one-on-one. And then from there, we just do a brief discovery. And from there, they say, okay, cool. Here's more content for day 2. Check that out. On day 2, then they do and then they book a second call for themselves. So it's like, here's content for day 2. Let's speak after that. So then they give them the next day's content and they speak again after that. So then there's a second call that they have. The goal of that second call is to review what they've covered prior, and also to continue to build rapport with them and build more of a gap and bring awareness to problems. And then they book in a third call and say, okay, between this third call, I'm going to send you what would be the pitch. They have a pre-recorded pitch of their product that the founder pretty much gives them. And then on that final call, they pretty much say, well, they do another coaching session where they meet about the pitch that was given or the content that was given the day prior. And the aim is to try to commit them on that third call. However, the place that I've been getting a lot of questions of this in my community is they don't feel like they're building enough of a gap in the first kind of rapport building call, the second like pre-pitch call, and then they're having a hard time converting people on the end. So I think what they're asking is, what are some ways to open up more of a gap in short 10, 20-minute calls in a 3-call structure? I want to improve my follow-up in a way of helping clients with their fear.
Wow, that sounds like a very long process.
I agree.
I mean,
I've got
I
my own
mean,
opinions about the funnel
I,
too.
I mean, I mean, to me, I had this discussion recently with 2 or 3 of my clients who have setters. Basically same thing. Someone responds to an ad, fills in a questionnaire, whatever, right? And then they have someone who sets the appointment. Sometimes it's the same person who's going to be the coach, who's going to help them buy the solution. And my thing is, well, why not do it all in one go? I mean, why break the continuity? You've got rapport, you've got relationship, you've found out their buying blueprint, because that's another big component of natural selling, is being able to literally within 5 questions have their logical and emotional buying blueprint, which you both agree on. I mean, it's very easy to get there, especially with calling leads. Why do you want to break the continuity? So that's one of the questions. Now, I'm not attempting to make a judgment on that, because there are times when having a setter is important, but that's just in the context of what I'm talking about. So I want to be really clear about that.
Right.
So I don't want someone saying, well, Michael Oliver said this, and except I didn't. What I said was it's within context. Like most stuff that I'm talking about has to be taken in context with whatever the question is all about. So there's that aspect there. You talk about fear, but where's the fear? Is it the fear of the salesperson or the fear of the person they're talking with?
Well, so I believe in the context of this question, they would be talking about the prospective customer's fear of committing, because this product is for B2C, your everyday person, teaching them how to make money. That's the nature of the offer. And so sometimes they find on that third call or the prior calls, they're resistant to change, really.
Okay. So here's a couple of things that come to mind. As I asked you that question, you step back and go, okay. Now, the reason I asked that question is because I was listening outside of anything else. I'm listening to not only the original question, and when I heard that word fear, there was no context around it. So immediately that jumped out of my mind, and that was floating around up here. And it's like, okay, I need to find out what you mean. I can't answer that question. I cannot answer that question until I understand what you mean by fear. Where is the fear coming from? Is it from the salesperson, or is it from the potential buyer? Now we've clarified it. Okay. But even then, we don't really know, because
it's an assumption.
It's an assumption. It has to be an assumption on your part, because and there's nothing wrong in that, because you just have to make an assumption as to, okay, maybe whatever the answer is. But that's the whole aspect of it. There was something else that kept coming. Oh yeah, the other thing is about, is that each time let's use the word strategy. You have a sort of, it seems to me, if I counted it, something like sort of 5 strategic steps that go on. Well, that's strategy again. You're bringing in strategy and the question is that, is the fear, let's say it's the fear of the person at the end. Well, you're breaking all the continuity, you're breaking the flow. So each time you set up a new strategy and you give them a video, it's not the person they're talking with. And I'll lay you dollars to donuts. It's not the video that sells them. I used to deal with clients who use the video, as the sales tool. Okay, a video is just how can I put it? It's just a feature of the very many features that you have that helps a person to understand. What happens a lot of times is people use the video as the thing that's going to sell them. So it's the owner of the company and so on and so forth. Okay, and owners of companies do very well. I have clients who actually do a video on the front end, and they explain everything up front beforehand, and it's very, very well done. But it doesn't sell the person. What it does is helps that person realize that in fact that they need to talk with a coach to understand more about how it can affect them personally. All right. So
that's a huge distinction right there, I think, is knowing, and this is, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off there, but I just realized that like there's that is where so many businesses go wrong, is actually understanding the utility of videos relative to the sales process. And you bring up a huge point there, which is the job of the salesperson is, I think, to help make that solution more personalized or make it relevant to that person or coach them into seeing how it would apply for them. The job of the sales material is to help them understand, or I think get someone receptive to the message or the idea that maybe they need change, where it's like, I think I might need something like this, or would like something like this in my life. And let's talk to somebody about this to see if it would actually apply. And it's important that you have to come in as a professional being detached. Well, it's like, well, it might, but I'm not sure. Let's have a conversation about it. You're speculating it might. I know what we do is good, but let's see if there's actually a fit. If businesses were all built like that, sales functions would work so much better. In the context of this system too, one thing I absolutely hate is like, I think that it's been built this way because I think there's a lack of trust on behalf of the business owner on the sales professionals to be able to present the solution properly, right? And so what's the way to de-risk that? Well, you guys aren't even given the power to present the solution. I'm going to present the solution. Or maybe I'm misinterpreting it, right? Because once again, we're building off of extrapolations of assumptions. I know the two people who are in my community selling this product, so it'd probably be best to bring them on and just have them go deeper into the questions, right? But you raised, that really struck a nerve with me, just the idea of the content is to help someone understand, right? And really, kind of make themselves aware of change. And the job is the professionals to help connect it to them.
You see, you see the video in the context that you were talking about in my world is just a sales tool. And in fact, if you go through the process where you're dealing with one coach or one salespeople, one rep, you might not even need it. Okay, it might be that during that process, a person has already bought into the idea and just wants to commit. But you've got all these blocks, these levels that they go through, they have to go through. And in the end, it's like the relationship. Well, what relationship? Because the first person they spoke with might be the last person, but they've broken it up in segments. And here's the thing: this is about a present moment conversation. So it's important to have continuity as a present moment conversation, even if you have a setter who's not the person who is going to be actually doing, let's say, the interviewing. It's important that the setter actually sets it up correctly in the culture, the environment, the intention of the person that's going to be taking it over, so that in fact the setter can actually pass notes and say, okay, here's Fred or Mary, okay, for you. Here's a little bit of background of where they're coming from, what they want, maybe a little bit of why they want it. In fact, they could dig in deep themselves and hand it over if they want. All right. So, but if they have dug in deep, they might as well do the whole thing themselves. So even though there's a break there, there's kind of continuity. It's like the setter is now handing it over to the coach, who's then taking it on and creating their own relationship with that person. And it can be done very, very quickly, just instantaneously like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to go back to what I was saying, it's a present moment conversation. Everything is in the present. So what I mean by this is this. Think of three structures. You've got past, present, future. Past,
Mm-hmm.
present, future, right? A lot of people are stuck in the past. That's their current reality. They are stuck there with stuff that is happening. Like the
Mm-hmm.
think about it guy, the think about it person, all right?
Yeah.
There's something that is holding them back. And so you talk
Mm-hmm.
about it. Where do you talk about it?
In the
You
past.
talk about the present moment.
Right.
All right. It's in the present moment. It's no use talking about the future, because the future, a lot of people, is a fantasy, or it's not achievable, or they've been there, done that, hasn't worked, and so on and so forth. But you can talk about the future by bringing it into the present moment, by relating how the past can be solved by the present. It is always a present moment conversation. You break that continuity, you've now created hurdles for yourself to try and get over in order to maintain that rapport and that continuity there. Does that make sense?
That is huge. I think that is something that takes experience to be able to not only articulate, but be able to, I don't know if manipulate is the right word, but control in real time. And I think it's something that's really important upon any professional, is to be able to know how to bring someone into the present. I think that's where a lot of people, or I've seen, or even myself, I've experienced, get stuck, where if someone's talking too much in the past, you might have the intuition that something is off, but I find that comes through in their languaging. I find like the best way is to figure out how to get the languaging to be about now. And I've told people that with problems. Sometimes you find people telling you, prospective problems in the future, or things they've dealt with in the past and things they've dealt with in the future. I mean, those are all right, but it's like, what I really want to hear is, okay, what's impacting you now, like with what's going on today in your current situation. And it's the same thing with committing, where it's like, sometimes people talk about, well, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it later. Okay, sure, you could, but like, how long have you had that behavior? Talked about this earlier, of thinking that tomorrow's a better day or later's a better day. And can you see why? Maybe that's why your present now isn't what you want it to be, is because you're predicating on it later. So how do we change that? Well, let's bring that future to today, because what's a future worth if you're suffering now?
Yeah. And also, let's bring the past behavior. Let's talk about the behavior which is based on something in the past, which it all is. All our behaviors are based on past experiences, prejudices, what we've allowed to ourselves to believe, and so on and so forth. And if we stop believing, I mean, I don't even believe in my stuff. I mean, I do. if you want to challenge me on something,
Yeah.
and it makes sense to me, because then I'll change it. I'm changing it all the time. Words that I use, and I go through some scripting that I write, and I go, wait a second, that doesn't seem quite right. Now I've used it, I know it works, but somehow or other there's a softer and more powerful way of writing it, or saying it, and I'll write it out. And what have I just done? I've just changed what I thought was correct in the past. And in fact, it's not that it isn't correct. It's just that it's not correct for this present moment. And really, that is that sort of working with people. Look, I use it the other way around. So for example, if I'm calling a company about a product or service or something like this, and something I'm not too sure about, I'll ask some questions. But I always ask, or nearly always ask, I shouldn't say always ask, but nearly always ask at the end of saying, is there anything else I should have asked that you can think of that will help me? Something like that. Is there anything else? Is there anything that you think I've missed in asking my questions? And a lot of times a person will come back, not many, but sometimes someone will come back, and they will say, yeah, actually there is something else, and they'll tell me something I didn't know about. And the only reason we get stuck in life is because we don't know about things. We didn't know what questions to ask. And one of the reasons we ask these questions, these different types of questions, and types is the word, okay, these different types of questions, is that we're helping people to, oh, some blooms went up there. It's like,
yeah, when you did this, I don't know, Zoom's put some new things in where
okay,
I don't know.
okay, cool. Well, that was interesting. Let's do it again. The reason we ask these types of questions is to help them ask the questions that they could have asked themselves if they'd known what to ask. There's a big clue for you.
Who are they really telling when you ask them, is there anything that I forgot to ask? Yeah. Well, so before we go too far on this point, when you talked about the last idea of it being a present moment conversation, don't chunk it up into so many things, carry it now. The next question, and I know the person who asked this, but what they say, what is the best way to transition to, well, a close directly after a triage call? The reason why they're asking is I will be calling warm leads for cremation services, and I have the ability to move directly into the close, and their KPI, 20% conversion rate is the KPI. But what is the best way to maybe take a, a very short triage and move that into a present moment conversation around a commitment, as you just spoke?
We do in the discovery stage. You just find out what they want, why they want it, the reasons behind why they want it, and so on. And then you just declare and say, well, there's something definitely we can do for you. And it's almost like saying, what's next? Moving forward. I mean, if you've established that the price is within their budget, you've got all the various components are in place, you just move forward and naturally assume the sale, having done a correct job in front of all that with discovering. I don't think I don't think it requires each conversation is unique. Sometimes you can do things in 5 minutes, and sometimes it'll take, sometimes it take 45 minutes.
Right.
But there's no real answer to that. You just transition into making the commitment to move forward. Yeah. I think we should wrap up. It's getting pretty close. We don't want to.
Yeah, we've run a little bit long. We actually have one more question. We've knocked them.
Okay,
we've covered them all. And I think this is a good one, which is, what is one thing salesmen focus on that actually doesn't matter at all? And alternatively, what is one small thing that salesmen ignore that would have a big impact? And why they're asking it? Well, I'm looking to improve where I am currently, and I believe the question would be beneficial to others looking to focus on growth.
So what's the first question again? What
do salesmen focus on that doesn't matter at all? And what are things that they ignore that have a really large impact?
I think most salespeople, based on the question I asked, what's the greatest fear that most salespeople have that holds them back from picking up the phone or talking with their clients, is the fear of rejection. That's what they focus on. And why? You have no idea of this person you're talking with, in most cases. This person's asking for help. And you're asking for help, and you fear of rejection, and you've got a fear of rejection. It's crazy. I mean, I've been through that. I know it. I know what it feels like, because that's where my mind was. Well, stop thinking that way. It's a person on the other end. I mean, yeah. It's like walking behind an elderly lady on the street, and she keels over and falls on the ground, and she's on her back and can't get up. And she looks up at you and says, would you help me, please? And you're saying, well, no, you might reject me. Come on. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Well, and I think that's also an indication too that you're too focused on yourself. You're too focused on you and what you're thinking, what you're feeling in the moment. Because I think if you're wholly focused on somebody else, there's no rejection to be had.
No, don't even think about the rejection. I mean, in my book, How to Sell the Way People Buy, it's one of the sort of number one reasons why. Well, I mean, it's all part and parcel of it. Number one reasons is why you get rejected is because you think you're getting rejected, and you're trying not to get rejected, and all your words and what you're saying and what you're asking is weasel words around trying not to get rejected. Well, stop it. Start focusing on that person as to what they want. Are they going to say yes most times? Maybe not. Are they going to be no's? Yeah, they're going to be no's. So accept it for what it is. But the whole aspect of being rejected is that we create rejection. Okay, so what's the other question? The reverse of that?
So the reverse of it is, what is something that salesmen ignore that has a large impact?
They don't listen. That's the first thing that comes to mind. I'm not sure it's a direct answer, but they don't listen. What they're listening for, most salespeople are listening for what they want to hear. They listen selectively. And the reality is, and I've done this with role plays on my coaching sessions and so on, is that, when you ask a question, a person can give you a one bite answer, or they can have 4, 5, 6 elements to it. You're listening for all those elements. Same as, for example, when I asked you that question about fear, was the question about the salesperson, or was the question related to the potential buyer? And you leant back and said, good question, I don't know. Okay, because I don't know either. But the point is that they will say certain things which are logical, personal, emotional, subjective. And if you don't listen to those things and you don't utilize them to expand on, to find out where that person is coming from, because you're focused on the next question or you're focused on something sort of logical, then you'll lose it. So that's what's missing with most salespeople. You gotta listen.
Yeah.
Listening is fun. Actually, listening can be really annoying, because I can listen to people's conversations, even in a social environment with friends or out in a coffee shop or something like that, and I hear 2-3 conversations going on. 2 or 3 people can be talking with each other, and they're having, well, let's say 2 people, make it easier. 2 people having a conversation, thinking they're talking about the same thing, but they're digging 2 different tunnels. They're just passing each other, and I'm going this thing in the back, going, yeah, but that's not what he asked, or yeah, but your reply is not what not what she said, And I feel like turning around and saying, listen to what this person is really coming from, and get rid of the conflict.
Yeah.
Never get. I mean, there's huge conflict because they're friends, but the point is that most friends don't understand each other. Why? Because they don't listen to each other. Anyway, there you go.
It's truly incredible. It's truly incredible. And I'd say for those of you guys who've been listening this far and you've enjoyed it, go ahead and drop a like on the video so other people can see this. And yeah, as always, Michael, it is truly a pleasure having you on. Just a world of wisdom and knowledge and intelligence. And
Thank
you. You just can't beat, you really just can't beat experience. And for those of you guys watching, we covered a lot of stuff today, and you heard Michael reference his program. And actually, Michael is talking about that he's actually been remaking Natural Selling. We have an updated version of it coming out. Is that right?
It's an updated version of the course. Yeah, when I did the course 2 or 3 years ago, it was a basic outline, and I've had so much demand that I spent a lot of time really going deeper into it, deeper and wider and taller, and giving a lot more information. And I'm in the process right now of finishing the audio. I'm probably about halfway through it. So if anyone has it, they'll find the audio is cut off, but it is there, and then they'll get it a little bit later.
Yes.
And if they want that, if you want to do that, you can go to naturalselling.com and pick it up. But first, if you haven't done it, read the book first, because it's the mindset, it's the natural selling mindset. And if you read that and you resonate with the book, which is how to sell the way people buy, then you have a choice. You can either try and work it out yourself, or you can allow me to help you get the course, and so on and so forth. And at the very end, if I have time, we can do some one-on-one coaching, but yes. I don't have other sales coaches. It's just me doing it, so it's fairly limited. So
yeah, quite literally, I'd say Michael is the Mr. Miyagi of the sales world right now. So it's incredible too for those of you guys who haven't been through any of his material. If you go through it, there's just another level of articulation. There's a really good book, Mastery, by Robert Greene, which is you can tell the level of a master by looking at his work. And so, Michael, it's very evident in everything that you do that there's another level of build and feel and naturalness to it that is really unmatched compared to everything else in the market. So as Michael said, if you guys are curious in that, check it out at naturalselling.com. And as always, we've got the Persuasion Academy run by myself, free to join. That will be linked down below alongside Natural Selling. And Michael talks about, if you're curious about learning more about the mindset or the energy of natural selling, as opposed to just the tactics, I think a really good supplement for the book would be the video that we created that will be also on this channel. So go ahead and check out my channel, and you should see it's about energy, not tactics. But sweet. Yeah, Michael, with that, any last closing notes before we wind it down?
No, have a great, I just enjoyed it. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Anytime. Yeah.
It's been a pleasure. And
doing great work, Caleb. Appreciate you. Thank you.
100%. And who knows, there might be another one of these, but the forum for asking Michael's questions, well, once again, it's in the PA, so go ahead and check that guys out. But sweet.
I'll look for the invitation in the mail.
Sounds good.
Okay, bye.
Sweet. See you soon, guys. Cheers.